So let's just talk about this tariff thing. Now, the reason I don't talk about these things is I'm not an economist. You know, you listen to the experts frequently get it wrong. I do strongly suspect that the panic and craziness is panic and craziness. I mean, Trump has this thing about trade deficits. I think we actually have a cut about this. Yeah, talking about trade imbalances, cut number 4. And he's said this is something he has been saying for as long as I remember. I mean, decades.
When I was with President Xi in China, as an example, we lose $500 billion a year on trade. We have a deficit of approximately $500 billion a year with China. And we're doing things with China which are very strong, but they understand it. But I was with him and I said to him in public, I said, look, I'm not blaming you. I blame our people for not doing a better job, for allowing this to happen. But it's like that with many countries other than smaller. The European Union has been particularly tough on the United States. They make it almost impossible for us to do business with them, and yet they send their cars and everything else back into the United States. And they can do whatever they'd like, but if they do that, then we put a big tax of 25% on their cars, and believe me, they won't be doing it very long. The European Union has not treated us well, and it's been a very, very unfair trade situation. I'm here to protect, and one of the reasons I was elected is I'm protecting our workers, I'm protecting our companies.
Now, just using basic logic about trade, you can see how things go right and you can see how things go wrong. If I spend $1,000 for a stereo, that stereo is worth more to me than $1,000. People always say, it's worth $1,000, but that's not right. The point is, I would rather have the stereo than the $1,000, or I wouldn't spend the money, right? It is also worth more. It's worth less than $1,000 to the guy who's selling it. He estimates how much work, how much materials he put into it. And he says, oh, it's about, $950, so I'm going to make, an extra $50 here. So he's making a profit, and I'm essentially making a profit because the stereo is worth more to me. You can't measure exactly what it's worth to me, but it's worth it to have the music, worth it to have the tone, whatever it is that I'm looking for. It's worth more than $1,000, or I wouldn't give him the money. That doesn't hold up when you're talking about things like that you need, like food. If you need food and you're starving and only one person has the food, he can charge you whatever he wants. And basically he's gouging you. You can say, well, it's worth more than all the money you have, but he's still gouging you. So this is what Trump is talking about. He's talking about steel, which of course we need. We make most of our steel, but he's also talking about these guys who screw around with us. And this is why Paul Ryan came out and said, you've got to be surgical about these things. You can retaliate against people who are actually hurting you, but you can't just go out there and say, yes, everybody is now going to pay this tariff on steel. Here's Paul Ryan talking what sounds to me like common sense.
There is clearly abuse occurring. Clearly, there is overcapacity, dumping, and transshipping of steel and aluminum by some countries, particularly China. But I think the smarter way to go is to make it more surgical and more targeted. So I think 232 is a little too broad, and I think it's more prone to retaliation. And so what we're encouraging the administration to do is to focus on what is clearly a legitimate problem and to be more surgical in its approach so we can go after the true abusers without creating any kind of unintended consequences or collateral damage.
The interesting thing about this is a steel guy, an American steel guy, who obviously supports. I mean, one of my problems with these tariffs is they're kind of like a tax on me to support the steel industry, because I'm going to be paying for these tariffs whenever you buy something made of steel. When you buy a car, the car is going to cost more. That money is essentially being given to the steel industry. That doesn't seem fair to me. But here's this guy, Burke Byer, who, even though he says, yes, I need this in order to compete, he also wants Canada and Mexico who are dealing fairly. He says he wants them to be carved out. Here's cut number 12.
The fortunate thing about this situation is the president has the ability in his power to carve out countries or products, and we're strongly in support that he hopefully evaluates all sides of the situation, and he's able to appraise our talented and valuable allies like Canada and Mexico. Because to the gentleman from Nova's point, they're very valuable trading partners with us.
Again, here it is. The news media is selling you chaos, world recession, end of the economy. Everything is terrible. in all of this stuff, there's sense to be made. When you're listening to Paul Ryan, he's talking sense. When you're looking at Trump negotiating, Trump is frequently talking more sense than even he sounds like, because he has that brash style and he always goes in guns blazing, and he always says the most extreme thing that he can say in every negotiating session. And this is a negotiating session. He is basically saying to these guys, hey, straighten up and fly right, or we're going to nail you. And you want to get in a trade war? I'm ready. I'm ready for a trade war. So you have the press going, it's a trade war. And he's saying, I don't care. All of that is nonsense. All of that is narrative. It's just a negotiation that's going on. And we'll see. I'm not sure that Trump knows what he's talking about when it comes to this, when it comes to the trade deficit. It seems wrong to me to worry about a trade deficit when you could have a trade surplus. We've had trade surpluses with countries that were doing terribly. I mean, if Turkey is cheating us and we straighten them out, are we going to, do we want to be like Turkey? Are we saying, gee, I wish we could be more like Turkey? I don't think so. The country actually is doing quite well economically, except for our government spending. So my only point about this is, as this news comes in all the time, be cool. Be cool. Don't let them tell you the story. Think through the story. That's all I'm saying. It's like, think through the story. When you're watching a mystery story, I remember this. There's this one that's a trial story where there's a guy who looks like the good guy and a guy who looks like the bad guy, and the good guy turns out to be the bad guy. And I just thought, that's not real. That's not like real life. I'm not going to be surprised by that, because that wouldn't actually happen in real life. Well, this is the same thing. Is the chaos really happening? Yeah, but it's a managing style. Are we going down the drain because of tariffs? No, it's a negotiation. These are things that you can disagree with, you can have different points of view on, but don't let them sell you this chaos and panic, because that is a technique they are using because a Republican is in office, and a Republican they especially dislike.